Thank you again to Mr. Rotherham. My name is Alyssa Carley, and I'm a senior secondary education student teaching social studies. And I'm also the president of the Rebel Educators student organization in the UNLV College of Education. It's inspiring to be here today, joined with so many thoughtful leaders and community organizers, as a part of a conversation to move education forward in our state. It's my honor to introduce our first panel in the lineup today, Innovation in the New Era, with a special look into Project Cultured. Project Cultured, which stands for College and University Leaders Trained to Understand and Respond to Exceptionalities and Diversity, is a $1 million Office of Special Education Programs Doctoral Leadership Training Grant, housed in the Department of Early Childhood, Multilingual, and Special Education. The focus of Project Cultured is to train doctoral scholars in special education, with a primary focus on understanding the intersectionality of exceptionality and cultural and linguistic diversity, as well as applied research in urban public school settings. Project Cultured scholars study on campus full-time, while also completing a research internship experience on public school campus in the Clark County School District. The purpose of the research internship experience is for scholars to understand the context of public school settings and work with practitioners to identify critical areas of needed research to best support the outcomes of students from diverse backgrounds. There are 9 Project Cultured scholars. 4 have graduated, 4 are in dissertation at present time, and the final scholar will be in dissertation next year. The goal is for all Project Cultured scholars to work in higher education or some other leadership position related to education at the conclusion of their doctoral studies. Currently, 2 of our alums are assistant professors at universities across the country. One is working for the Nevada Department of Education as a program officer, and one is actively searching for a position at a university. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ms. Sarah McCarthy, UNLV College of Education doctoral candidate, Dr. Kathy Ewoldt, UNLV College of Educational doctoral graduate. Ms. Katelyn Zirkus, UNLV College of Education doctoral candidate. And our moderator, Dr. Joe Morgan, UNLV College of Education assistant professor.
Hello, are we on? Can you hear me? Oh my gosh, it's so bright up here. I didn't realize. Good morning still. We have the great pleasure of facilitating the panel right before lunch, and that's my favorite place to be, is keeping you from food. So welcome to the UNLV College of Education Summit. My name is Joe Morgan. I am the project director along with Drs. Kyle Higgins, Josh Baker, and Tracy Spees of Project Cultured, a grant we were awarded from the Office of Special Education Programs in 2015, I think. So we're heading towards the end of our grant, and I'm very honored to be here and share with you some of the experiences of our scholars. These 3 ladies will tell you exactly what it's like to be a member of Project Culture. There's no worry that they are also my students. So no, I'm just kidding. And so we're really glad to be here. The whole purpose of this project was to design a doctoral leadership grant where doctoral scholars spent time in the field of public education, so that as they designed their lines of research inquiry and started teaching in teacher education programs, that they really spent time understanding the context of a school from an applied setting. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of their learning experiences in those applied research internships. So the first question I'll turn it over to each of you to address is, can you each tell us a little bit about yourself, including where you're at in the program, and then what your current areas of research interests are?
Okay, I guess I'm starting. My name is Sarah McCarthy. I have been a participant in Project Culture going on, this is my 4th year, and I'm currently in the doctoral candidacy stage, so I'm immersed in my dissertation. My research really looks at identifying the construct of math anxiety with populations of students that are at risk for mathematics difficulties. So looking at students with and without disabilities, students who are English learners, I love UNLV. I've been here for quite some time, so I see a lot of familiar faces.
Dr. Ewoldt?
I'm Kathy Ewoldt. Am I on? Okay. It's hard to hear yourself up here. I came on campus full-time in January of 2015 as part of Project Cultured, and I defended my dissertation just this past April, and I'm the one who is actively seeking a tenure-track position, so shameless plug. My research interest, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, is partly in part because of this field experience that we got to do on the school campuses, really started to center around paragraph writing for students with disabilities who may or may not also be English learners. I'm also particularly interested in populations of students that have to deal with trauma. Maybe that is through being a military-connected student, or perhaps even kids that are in the foster care program.
And I'll finish us off. I'm Katelyn Zirkus. I'm also in my 4th year. I'm getting ready for proposal, hopefully soon. And I look at self-determination and the quality of life for students with severe mental health diagnosis. So I tend to work on the more severe end, violent behaviors, juvenile justice, and the intersection of the systems. And I think that's pretty much it for me.
Good, excellent. I forgot to mention to you all, I did not tell them what this event was. I just asked them to participate in a panel. They walked in and they're like, this is so formal and there's so many people here. So they're doing a great job. So they were terrified. Good. So the first question about the research internship and one of the goals of Project Cultured is one thing that we set out to do was to provide a deeper understanding of the context of public schools in urban settings, so that as you design your research inquiry to meet the needs of students, teachers, and families on those campuses, that you really understand the context, with the primary hope that understanding of context can design research that's more implementable at the conclusion of the research study. So can you give us a little bit about an overview of your research that you explored at your internship site, and then how that was shaped by the experiences that you had in your public school research internships? Whoever wants to go.
Okay, I'll go first again. So I was really lucky to be placed at 2 different school sites and work with 2 different communities. And my goal was always academic driven with mathematics. So when I went into the schools, my goal and my research plan was to take evidence-based practices and interventions and really support teachers and students and show them what works for their students. But I quickly found out that there was this lack of confidence when it came to mathematics, and there was this lack of self-determination, and that, what our statistics say, that over 90% of Americans have a negative experience with math. It rings true in some of these schools that I was working at. So I thought we really need to kind of shift gears and start at the foundation of what students think about math, even what teachers think about math, because we have a lot of teachers that really don't have that confidence to teach it as well. So we really kind of, instead of, before we tackle those interventions and those practices, we first have to kind of get people comfortable with mathematics. And so that's really what changed for me and really opened my eyes to kind of making this new path for my own personal research.
In one of the first courses that we took very early on in the program, one of the assignments was to go out and do a needs assessment on our campus. And so I was partnered with another student, and we went and we looked at what was going on there. I was at an elementary school, and the data was showing that there was a literacy deficiency, there was a greater need in literacy than in mathematics. And so we just thought, okay, well then let's really look at reading. And we did a site survey, and we interviewed students and teachers and leaders and parents. And we were really just thinking that it was going to be all around reading. And the data did not support that at all. Everybody loved reading, and so we were just really kind of perplexed by it. So we went back to the research, and one of the things that I found was that in urban environments, one of the, a commonality for urban schools that have a very high success rate in their students passing statewide assessments is where they have a focus on writing interventions. And so then I started to explore writing. And one of the things that I found out is that 60 to 70% of teachers don't feel confident in their own ability to teach writing. And only about 30% have actually had any kind of formal training in how to teach writing, and the majority of that has come in the form of professional development, not even as part of their pre-service instruction. So it really helps to kind of guide where my line of inquiry ended up going to.
I'm next, okay. So I work at Miley Achievement Center. It is a special school in Clark County, and kids are placed there from their IEP teams due to violent behavior. So a lot of my expertise is on the back end, looking at more outcomes focused. And typically kids with emotional behavior disorders have some of the worst outcomes across kids with disabilities. So that was really my focus, was to go in and improve quality of life for these kids that are interacting with lots of different systems. I do a lot of work with teachers and implementing choice-making opportunities and decision-making, and just kind of resetting their focus on self-determination and kind of giving some control back to those kids with emotional behavior disorders. So I do a lot of, I'll go in over the summer and work with the teachers in setting up classrooms. I do a lot of just little things. I'll do professional developments on long-term goal setting. I'm kind of there as an as-needed basis, but my big global focus is looking at environments and kind of seeing how we can tweak them to make them more self-determined in nature, I guess. So yeah, mine's a little bit shorter than your guys's, but yeah, more literal.
Great. So then, talking a little bit more about your internship experiences, how did those experiences impact your understanding of how you design innovative research programs? And then I think it's interesting, because I had never put it together until you all three said it, but we all, through these research internships, it also sounds like you understood the intersection of systems in kind of changing some of these outcomes that you've talked about. That we focus a lot on intervention design and design of research to do interventions, but then there's also a how do we support people in implementing it, that we need more research on writing, but then we also need to make sure that we are training teachers to teach writing, and that's a big gap in some of our licensure programs. So how did, I'm going a little off script here, but you'll flow with me, I think. How did the research internships that you did impact the ways both that you understood design of scholarship that takes place in a contextualized setting, but then also in the skills that need to be embedded into in-service and pre-service professional development and education, so that teachers have the skills and systems know the programs that actually work to change the student outcomes?
Can I jump in? Yeah. Before I was even able to do anything, before they would even listen or be open to what I was going to say, they wanted to know that I've earned my stripes, so to say. So I really had to go in and kind of have my actions match my words and say, no, I know what these kids are. I've taught these kids. I've been in trenches. I've been spit on. I've been bit. You know what I mean? All of those things before they would even consider listening. And that was a big piece for me, is seeing that, no, I understand on like a real human level what you're going through, and I know this is going to work. So that was kind of just before I could even do any research to kind of close that gap. I had to really come to terms with myself to realize that piece. So sorry, I just wanted to jump in before.
Well, I want to speak to the teaching students in the licensure programs because I think, and it's already been mentioned today, the research to practice gap. This is something that as researchers and leaders, we struggle with constantly. And in a lot of the graduate classes and even undergraduate classes that I teach, it's getting them aware of what that research to practice gap is because we have this wealth of knowledge and then we bring it to the classroom, but then once we leave the classroom, what do teachers do with it, right? Do they know how to access interventions or access information or know what to do? And so a lot of times I like to bring into my teacher licensure classes and my teacher prep classes is how to read the research or how to find the particular research or how to work with a specific population and kind of guide them and give them those tools. So in a sense, it's like a professional development within a professional development, you know? But I think that's really important because we can go into these schools and we can say, okay, these are your needs and this is where we can support you. But once we leave that school site, what's going to happen? So we need to help our teachers and our educators and administration and all those stakeholders kind of build this toolbox of how to use it once we're not on that school site anymore.
And to fluency is another, just to your point, it has to be built to fluency, to where they can actually go find an article, highlight the main pieces, and go implement it with fidelity. So just dovetailing on you.
Okay. And a little bit different vein of research to practice. One of the things that I really appreciated about this whole program was that it gave us a real world experience. And I kind of always used to explain this to people, and they said, well, what is this all about? I would say, well, it's kind of like, you know how in medical schools, interns or people who want to become doctors, they go into a real hospital and they have a residency experience. Well, that was kind of what it was for us. We went onto a real school site and we got a real world experience of what it was like to perform research in the midst of day-to-day operations. And so it was a reduction, I guess, in that what we think we're going to research versus what we're actually able to do. And for me, the way that changed how I approach my teacher education courses is that one of the complaints about people who leave the profession is that they feel like when they are going through their pre-service training, there's kind of a gap between what we teach them at the university about what it's going to be like in the classroom versus when they get to their first year and the experiences that they actually have. And that gap, the wider that gap is, the more likely they are going to be to leave the profession. So if we can keep our instruction at the university level more to a real world situation, I think that's going to help to reduce the turnover that we see. So I think that's kind of how it's impacted my own teaching.
Good. And to expand on that, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times that the role of colleges of education, particularly doctoral training colleges of education, in spearheading some of these closing gap initiatives. How do we make sure that evidence-based practices are happening? So do you have recommendations as you enter into the job search to be faculty members at colleges of education? What do you think colleges of ed could do to make sure that some of the things that you learned on your research internship experiences are embedded in both teacher ed programs and then doctoral training programs?
I can start. I think it really is about relationships and building relationships with between the universities and the local school sites. There was Dr. Tom Lovett, who's in my academic lineage, who was trained in the really early years of special education as a field, and his philosophy was that professors should have their offices in public school settings. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's really kind of, why would you do that? That seems so foreign, you know? But now, after being on the school site I will absolutely be on a school site at least one day every single week in doing whatever it is that they need us to do, whatever kind of a resource we can be to serve, to just help to build that partnership, to see that we can offer things to one another and learn and grow and help one another to really help the kids that we serve to have better outcomes.
I think that's a really good point that Kathy makes, that whatever it may be in that school, so whether we have a direct agenda, it doesn't matter. We've been in schools and we've been getting coffee and helping out in different classrooms and going on field trips, and being present and building that trust in those relationships is very crucial part for us to do.
And then I'll add one other piece to what she was saying, field experience. So the more time we can get them in the classrooms and seeing the realities, to your point, the better the longer they're going to stay, the more we can keep them in the room. So I think that would be my only.
Good. And so I think adding on to that, one of our, they hear this from me all the time, you got to go make relationships and get to know what people need and where they're at. We can't just go in and do work and then leave because our work is done. We really are serving a community that we can continue to work with and build partnerships with. So what are some things that you all did to make sure, before you even proposed research inquiry, to get to know and build relationships with parents, families, students, teachers, administrators? How did you get yourself into the internship experience and really serve with what I always tell you all, radical humility, learning from the setting itself, that you are there to share expertise, but then also learn a lot from the systems that you did. So what are some ways that you built those relationships and connections on school campuses?
I think, like Sarah said, we just did whatever it took.
Yeah, we did.
Whatever the need was. I was there. A lot of what I did, actually, I ended up being involved in when they were doing their benchmark assessments in the computer labs and just helping get kids logged on that kind of stuff. I was there on the first day of school helping parents at the gate. I had a list of where their homeroom was, what teacher, where they were supposed to be, helping direct kids to, especially the kindergartners. It was their first time on campus, showing them where to line up. I don't know, just whatever it took is what we were there. And just having a presence, I think, really was very helpful.
Consistently.
Yeah.
Consistent presence.
And a big part was listening. So, everyone has a story to tell, and just listening to those stories and treating them all as equally important stories, and just listening to those needs and those questions, and not, you could walk in and be like, I know everything. Like, I have all of this knowledge, but that's not the way that you're going to build trust and really produce genuine relationships. So listening to everyone that you're working with, even the kids and the community members. I had the chance to do a couple community events with one of my school sites, and that, just having your face there and meeting people that are involved is truly important.
Ditto.
Good. So from those, think back to that first day you started doctoral studies to now. It seems like it was a long, long time ago, but it was not for any of you. How have your perspectives shifted through participation in the activities of this applied doctoral research internship experience that we were able to get funded through OSEP? How did your perspectives change? How has it changed your practice? How has it changed your view now as you're at the end of yourself as a faculty member at a university?
I think I realized that anything I do in a school has to be functional. Like, it has to be easy, functional, and they can do it and see the results within a 30-day period. Anything past that, especially in the school I'm working in, the schools I'm going to be working in, the results have to be pretty quick. So, functionality, I would say.
For me, I think it was a lot about authentic experience. Mm-hmm. In my teacher prep classes, in the research that I'm doing, just keeping it real, and not losing the connection between the kids that we're serving and the teachers who are teaching them and the parents who are involved, but just making it a genuine experience all around.
Yeah, I agree. And learning how to roll with the punches, that things change and it's okay. We all started the doc program with these dreams and these aspirations to change the world of education and special education, but learning that those may not be the current needs of the climate, and knowing that it will change wherever we go. Being on two school campuses, both diverse communities, but they both had different needs. So I'm just rolling with the punches and knowing that it can change and that's completely fine, and being able to do what we need to do to support that.
Great. One off the script question, and then we'll finish up, I think. 5 minutes, is that right? Okay, perfect. We're timing this perfectly. I will say, one of my favorite things about doctoral training is that you all are now going to go out onto university campuses across the country, and you're going to be able to work in teacher education programs, work with state policymakers in whatever state you end up, and be able to implement the things that you've learned here. So it's a twofold question that goes one, and then this last one is the actual last question. What is one lesson that you're going to take with you and make sure, based on this experience, I'm going to implement when I take my own tenure track role? And then on the flip side of that, what's one recommendation that you might make to policy leaders in this room, or policy leaders in wherever you end up when you enter your tenure track role, to be able to do this more connected, field-driven type of intervention base, where we at the university are really understanding the context of what's happening in public school environments, and also how folks in public schools can partner more with universities to do some of this systematic study you've engaged in. So, lesson you're going to take with you, and then advice or recommendation you would make to people to kind of enhance these. Let's do recommendation, or lesson you'll take, and then we'll do recommendation second.
Okay, the lesson I'm going to take with me is I will absolutely try to replicate something similar wherever I go, provided that the context would support that. And the way I think I can help to make the context support that is going to be, again, getting out into the field and building those relationships. I think there's a lot around in the teacher education division of the Council for Exceptional Children. There's a lot of movement towards field-based experiences at a much earlier point in teacher education programs. I know even with AACTE, the gentleman is here, I know I went to a conference and they're doing a lot more of that as well, where we're getting our students out into real classrooms and real world situations as early as possible. And I think it kind of mirrors what you were able to do for us, that in our doc programs, you got us out into real world situations very early on. It wasn't, we didn't have to wait until we were in an assistant professor position. We're doing it now. And I think it's just been a great experience.
I think the knowledge that we can't, and Andy talked about this, that we can't solve problems alone, that the schools can't do it alone, and as researchers, and we can't do it alone. So realizing that there's multiple facets, there's multiple puzzle pieces to put together, and remembering that moving forward and creating our research and creating those paths.
And I said it earlier, but just maintaining like a level of humility, not coming in with PhD, but coming in with like, I'm here to help you. So really just carrying that no matter where I go. So, yeah.
Good. And any advice for folks who want to continue to explore this intersection of research and practice and how we can make sure that both sides are working together to inform as we move the field forward?
I really think that we're very lucky to be part of this program. I think if I wasn't a participant in Project Cultured, I would be just doing my thing and, maybe it's relevant in the research or not, but really getting that chance to have those authentic experiences. I really feel like it should be the norm in a doctoral program that, every doctoral student, everyone whose goal is to be a leader and a researcher really has this chance. So whether it's creating programs or implementing programs or writing grants for this type of work, I think just that step in that direction is a plus.
I think learning from one another in contexts just like this, I think you all are doing it today, having the conversations with people who may or may not agree with what your own personal agenda is, but to have the conversation, to listen to one another and to learn from one another.
And then finally, my advice would be to look at outcomes, because I'm a big transition proponent, obviously. Outcomes, to constantly be looking at what does the data say, where are they going, what's their quality of life. So that's my...
Wonderful. Well, I will tell you, those of you who know me, and I know several people in the room, and my constant refrain is, how is what we're doing going to improve the lives of kids with disabilities? That is always what the focus of my work is. And I will tell you that I have had such a great experience guiding. They've taught me more than they've learned from me. I guarantee you that 100%. And that ability to see people go out and do this applied work in school settings to impact the lives of kids. I hopefully have a long career ahead of me, but I know that Project Culture and the work that you all have done is going to be one of the crowning achievements I claim when I'm done. However long from now that is, hopefully not too long, but good. So I thank you all for participating. I encourage you all, I asked not to take Q&A because they were also terrified, so, but they are fantastic. They have lots of stories to tell. So if you see them at lunch, I encourage you all to ask them more about what they learned from their research internship experiences. Thank you all so much.
Thank you to the members of Project Cultured panel for sharing your experience about your in-classroom and school experience. So now I invite you to spend some time grabbing some food and conversations and a bit of networking with your colleagues. Enjoy.